the man who holds the world hostage, Vladimir Putin. Today, he is considered the most powerful leader on Earth. A single action, a flick of his wrist, could trigger a nuclear war. Just think about this for a moment. To understand his influence, even with more than half of the world's superpowers united against him, Russia invaded Ukraine. And despite thousands of sanctions, no nation has been able to bring Russia to its knees. Right now, the entire continent of Europe is trembling, not because of a country, but because of a single man. The world's media is desperate to paint him as a villain. But is he? This is the villain who pulled Russia out of a crippling debt and built a $700 billion reserve. In a country where 1 in 3 people was once poor, today 90% of the population is considered wealthy. This was Russia in 1990. This is Russia today. He is a president who bans his opposition and controls the media. Yet, the Russian people love him. Among the youth generation, his approval rating stands at 84%. So, what is the spell he has cast? Why won't they accept anyone else? Today, we uncover the extraordinary journey of Vladimir Putin, from a lowly intelligence officer to the undisputed Tsar of Russia, ruling for over 25 years.
Putin, Vladimir Putin.
Most powerful man in the world.
The making of a spy. Vladimir Putin was born in 1952 in Leningrad, Soviet Union, now known as St. Petersburg. At the time, the Cold War raged between America and the Soviet Union. His father, a veteran of World War II, fought to defeat Hitler. When the Nazis captured Leningrad, they killed Putin's 2 older brothers. He was the youngest, born after the war. Growing up, Putin was small for his age and often bullied. He grew up listening to stories of Hitler's tyranny and Western imperialism, and was deeply inspired by spy movies. In 1968, a film called The Shield and the Sword went viral in Russia. Its impact was so profound that millions of young Soviets dreamed of becoming intelligence officers. A 16-year-old Putin was one of them. He was so obsessed that he walked straight into the office of the KGB, the Soviet Union's premier intelligence agency. But they told him a KGB agent needs a law degree. So, in 1970, Putin enrolled at Leningrad State University. The fall of the Berlin Wall. After graduating, he joined the KGB. By 1985, he was stationed in Dresden, East Germany. His mission: monitor the movements of America and NATO in Europe after WWII. Germany was split into East and West by the infamous Berlin Wall. But by the time Putin arrived in East Germany, the Soviet Union was weakening. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Germany was unified, and the Soviet Union's influence in Europe crumbled. Putin returned to Russia, stepping into the chaotic world of politics. His job was to maintain a link between the central government and regional powers to prevent the total collapse of the nation. The rise of the oligarchs. Then came the greatest shock. The Russia we see on the map today did not exist before 1991. It was the Soviet Union, a bloc of 15 republics. In 1991, geopolitical differences tore these nations apart, leaving only what we now know as Russia, but independence came at a terrible price. The economy crashed. The shift from a state-controlled communist system to capitalism happened overnight. State-owned factories and industries were sold off for pennies to private businessmen. These men became the oligarchs, operating like a mafia syndicate. They grew so powerful that they began to control the government itself. The weak leader, Boris Yeltsin, Boris Yeltsin, Russia's new president, was a weak leader. He was a puppet of the West, often incapacitated by alcohol. He sold the nation's wealth to the oligarchs. Millions of factory workers lost their jobs. Their savings vanished. People couldn't afford a loaf of bread. Trust in the government evaporated, and protests erupted everywhere. By 1998, the government was so bankrupt it couldn't even pay its workers' salaries. Fearing a revolution, Yeltsin and his ministers devised a plan. They needed a prime minister who would be a puppet. They needed a loyalist. Their choice, Vladimir Putin. The mastermind, becoming a national hero. Why Putin? He was the chief of the FSB, the successor to the KGB. He was loyal to Yeltsin and completely unknown to the public. On December 31st, 1999, Yeltsin resigned and Putin became the acting prime minister. But here was the problem. Only 2% of Russians knew who he was. Then, a series of bombings rocked Moscow and surrounding areas, killing thousands. The nation was in panic. The chess move. Putin went on television and blamed Chechen terrorists. He declared, "We will pursue terrorists everywhere. If they are in an airport, we will find them. If they are in a bathroom, we will kill them. We will wipe them out." His popularity skyrocketed from 2% to 53% in a single week. The dark truth. Later, investigations suggested that the FSB, Putin's own organization, orchestrated these bombings to fuel his rise to power. In March 2000, Putin was elected president of Russia.
Vladimir Putin!
The iron grip. How Putin stays in power. Once in power, Putin knew he had to eliminate the threat of the oligarchs to survive. Taming the oligarchs. He called a meeting with the top 200 oligarchs and gave them a clear ultimatum. Stay out of politics and you can keep your wealth. Defy me and you will face the consequences. Those who accepted became allies, getting lucrative government contracts. Those who resisted were mysteriously murdered, imprisoned, or exiled. Controlling the narrative, Putin took control of the media. Channels that opposed him were shut down or brought under state control. Today, Putin decides what the truth is for the Russian people. The global media may call him a villain, but Russian state media frames him as a savior, protecting them from the Nazi regime in Ukraine. Dismantling democracy, he abolished the election of regional governors, appointing them himself. All power is centralized in the Kremlin, in Putin's hands. The power of oil and survival. Russia's economy runs on oil and gas. During the 2000s, global fuel prices skyrocketed, and Russia began exporting massive amounts of energy. Putin cut taxes, people had money in their pockets, and unemployment fell. He took credit for all of it, solidifying his image as a provider. Now, during the Ukraine war, the West has imposed unprecedented sanctions. They froze billions in assets and stopped trade, trying to recreate the chaos of Yeltsin's era. The China card, but Putin outmaneuvered them. Russia pivoted to China, becoming its top friend. Russia provides cheap oil to China, and China supplies Russia with the goods it can no longer get from the West. Today, giant shopping malls have opened near the Russian-Chinese border. Russians can enter freely and buy anything they need. This is why, even after 4 years of war, the Russian economy is stable. Putin's strategy is working. Conclusion. From a KGB spy to the Tsar of Russia, Vladimir Putin has survived for 25 years by centralizing power, controlling the media, and playing a masterful global game. He is a figure of immense complexity, a ruthless autocrat to the West, but a father figure to the Russian people. Like him or hate him, one thing is clear. Vladimir Putin is the world's most powerful leader, and he isn't going anywhere.